thought my family was safe until my daughter found one small thing that changed everything. My husband begged me to forget it, but I knew he was hiding the truth. I am Tala Silverbear, a wildlife photographer. I have always trusted my family, but one secret forced me to fight for my future and protect my daughter. The morning started like any other, filled with the golden light of a Montana summer streaming through the kitchen windows. I was busy checking my camera lenses, preparing for a long day tracking wolves in the backcountry, when my 7-year-old daughter, Maya, came running in from the mudroom. She had been playing in the crawl space again, a place I had repeatedly told her was off limits, but her excitement seemed to override her usual caution. She held out a small metallic object, her small fingers trembling slightly with the thrill of discovery. It was an old rusted lockbox key, one I didn't recognize from our keychain collection. I smiled, brushing hair from her face, intending to offer a light-hearted scolding. But then I looked closer at the small engraved initials on the metal, JS and MS. My pulse jumped, a sudden cold rhythm against my ribs. I turned to my husband, Julian, who was pouring coffee at the counter. When I asked him where this key might have come from, he froze, his back stiffening in a way that felt entirely unnatural. He turned around, his face a mask of practiced calm that didn't reach his eyes, and told me it was just a piece of junk from the previous owners, something I should toss in the trash. But the way he gripped his mug, his knuckles turning white, told a different story. I didn't throw it away. I tucked it into my vest pocket, the weight of the metal suddenly feeling heavier than lead. Our peaceful life, built on years of shared morning coffees and quiet nights, felt like it was starting to hairline crack right beneath our feet. The unease didn't dissipate. It festered. Later that day, my brother Marcus stopped by to drop off some supplies for our upcoming hiking trip. He and Julian had always been close. Too close, perhaps, given their recent hushed business dealings. But today, the dynamic shifted. I watched from the doorway as Marcus walked in, his eyes darting toward the counter where the key had been. He didn't greet me with his usual boisterous hug. Instead, he hovered near Julian, his posture defensive, almost guarded. I remembered a moment from last Christmas, when Marcus had suddenly liquidated his savings to invest in a property venture that Julian had been spearheading. At the time, I thought it was just two brothers supporting each other's ambitions, but now the memory felt tainted. There was a frantic quality to their whispers, a rapid exchange of glances that seemed to bypass me entirely. I stood in the kitchen, the scent of pine and coffee suddenly overwhelming, and watched them. It hit me then, a sickening realization that turned my stomach. They were hiding something significant. The way they spoke, the way they fell silent the moment I stepped into the room, it wasn't just a business secret. It was a conspiracy. I realized with a clarity that left me breathless that someone in my own family, the people who were supposed to be my bedrock, had betrayed me in a way I couldn't yet name. The house grew silent after they left, but the silence was heavy, pressurized by the weight of what I suspected. I waited until Maya was asleep, her breathing deep and rhythmic, before I moved to the study. I didn't turn on the lamp, letting the moonlight guide me as I began to search. I knew where Julian kept his sensitive files, though I had rarely felt the need to look through them. My hands trembled as I pulled the bottom drawer of his desk open, sorting through tax returns and property deeds. Near the back, hidden behind a stack of old photography portfolios, I found a manila envelope. It wasn't just papers. It was a map of land surveys, some dated back nearly 20 years, long before I had even met Julian. As I scanned the documents, I saw names I recognized: my father's old partners, local government officials, and my brother's signature repeatedly splashed across the bottom of illicit land agreements. I began connecting events from years ago: the mysterious way my father had lost his initial estate, the sudden prosperity of my brother's lifestyle, and the strange, high-stakes nature of the work Julian claimed to be doing. This wasn't a minor error in judgment. This was a systematic lie, a structure of deception that had been operating since before I was even part of this family. The sheer scale of it left me reeling. Over the next week, the air in our home became a minefield. I watched every conversation, every inflection of their voices, with a clinical detachment that surprised even me. I would sit across from Julian at the dinner table, smiling, passing the salt. all while my mind raced through the documents I had memorized. I caught them whispering in the garage, their heads bent together, their voices low and sharp. When I walked in, they stopped immediately, Julian feigning interest in a wrench, Marcus turning away to avoid my gaze. I pretended everything was normal, playing the role of the devoted, oblivious wife and sister, while my heart beat a frantic, uneven rhythm against my ribs. It was exhausting, this performance. Every laugh I forced felt like a betrayal of my own integrity. I realized, with a growing sense of isolation, that I could trust almost no one. The house, which had once been a sanctuary of warmth and creative light, now felt like a stage set built on rotten floorboards. I was being watched. I knew that much, even if they couldn't see the depth of my suspicion. They were waiting for me to settle down, to forget, to go back to being the person who didn't ask questions. They had no idea that I had already begun to dismantle their world. The final piece of the puzzle came from a discovery that hit harder than the financial documents. I found a second set of records tucked away in an old digital drive I thought contained only my photography backups. It was an account of a settlement, a payout from a company that had encroached on protected land my family had allegedly been defending. Julian and Marcus hadn't been fighting to save the wildlife habitats. They had been selling them out, bit by bit, pocketing the hush money while presenting themselves as the guardians of the wilderness. I felt a surge of hot, acidic rage, followed by a cold, numbing heartbreak. They had used my identity, my career as a photographer, to build a public facade of integrity that masked their greed. I looked at the photos on my wall, the ones I had taken in good faith, and I felt sick. They had betrayed not just me, but everything I stood for. The anger was a fire in my veins, but I refused to let it consume me. My primary focus shifted. I was no longer the victim of their scheme, but the protector of my daughter. She was the one thing they wouldn't corrupt. I took a deep breath, staring out into the dark trees of the backyard, and made a silent vow. They would be held accountable, no matter the cost to my own comfort or reputation. I kept my emotions tightly locked away, a skill I'd honed from years of waiting in blinds for the perfect fleeting wildlife shot. I remained calm, quiet, and observant. I started making copies of everything: the bank transfers, the land deeds, the emails between them and the developers. I had to learn who was helping them, and it turned out to be an entire network of local contacts my brother had cultivated over the years. I spent my nights documenting every detail, my office desk becoming a command center for my own defense. I didn't reach out to my family. I knew they were too compromised. Instead, I reached out to an old colleague from my journalism days, a woman I trusted implicitly, to hold the files in a secure, off-site location in case anything happened to me. The preparation was grueling. There were moments when the sheer weight of the betrayal threatened to break me, but every time I looked at Maya's toys in the corner of the room, my resolve hardened. I was preparing for the most difficult confrontation of my life. A battle that would strip away the veneer of my existence. But I was ready. Julian began to notice my quietness, and the pressure started to mount. He approached me one evening, his voice dripping with false concern, asking if I was overworking myself again. He suggested I take a break, maybe go away for a few weeks to a retreat, clearly hoping to get me out of the house while he cleaned up his remaining tracks. I looked him in the eye, holding his gaze with a steadiness that made him shift uncomfortably. I refused his suggestions, dismissed his excuses, and kept my plans moving forward. I understood that telling the truth would blow up my entire life, that the social standing we had built, the ease of our existence, would vanish in the ensuing firestorm. Yet the thought of living another day behind a wall of lies was unbearable. I realized that my family was not the people I had been living with, but the values I had been trying to uphold. I would not back down, not for the sake of peace, and not for the sake of the past. The proof I had gathered was airtight. It was a trail of paper and digital footprints that led straight back to them. I reached out to a contact at the state attorney's office, someone I knew dealt with corporate land fraud. I sent the files along with a detailed summary and received a call back within 48 hours. The investigator was stunned by the depth of the corruption. He agreed to work with me, providing a timeline for when the subpoenas would be issued. I organized every document, every message, every date, and every bank record into a folder that I kept hidden in my camera bag. It was the only place I knew was safe. My friend, the one I had shared the copies with, agreed.